Good evening and welcome to this meeting of Rother District Council. My name is Councillor Brian Drayson, Chair of the Council. This meeting is being held remotely and is being live streamed via YouTube. The recording of this meeting will be available afterwards on our website. All members and officers are reminded to put their mobile phones on silent if they have one near them, and to both switch off their cameras and mute their microphones when not speaking, as this will reduce any distractions, feedback and background noise. When called upon to speak, members and officers should turn on their cameras and unmute their microphones. Please be aware that there can be a time delay of around 5 seconds before the person who wishes to speak appears on screen. The following members and officers are asked to leave their cameras on throughout the meeting: Councillor Doug Oliver, Leader of the Council; Councillor Carl Maynard, Leader of the Conservative Group; Councillor Kevin Dixon, Leader of the Lib Dem Green Group; Councillor Christine Bayliss, Leader of the Labour Group; Mr Malcolm Johnston, Executive Director; Dr Tony Leonard, Executive Director, and myself as Chair. This will hopefully leave space on the screen for any member who is speaking, and hopefully will give the public on YouTube a better experience. I will now ask the Democratic Services Manager to conduct a roll call to check that all members who are expected are present. When your name is called, please turn on your microphone and confirm you are connected. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. John Barnes.
Present.
Mary Barnes.
Present.
Bayliss.
Present.
Bird.
Present.
Brewerton.
Present.
Brown.
Present.
Byrne.
Present.
Carroll.
Present.
Clark. Clark.
Present.
Coleman.
Present.
Mrs Cook.
Present.
Courtell.
Present.
Curtis.
Present.
Dixon.
Present.
Drayson.
Present.
Mrs Earl Williams.
Present.
Errington.
Present.
Field.
Present.
Ganley.
Present.
Gray.
Present.
Hart. Mrs Hart. Johnson.
Present.
Mrs Kirby Green.
Present.
Langlands.
Present.
Madeley.
Present.
Maynard.
Present.
Mere.
Present.
Mooney.
Present.
Norton.
Present.
Oliver.
Present.
Osborne.
Present.
Proshak.
Present.
Stevens.
Present.
Thomas.
Present.
Tempe.
Present.
Vinehall.
Present.
Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Lisa. Officers joining us today are Mr Malcolm Johnston, Executive Director; Dr Tony Leonard, Executive Director; Mr Robin Venard, Assistant Director Resources; Mrs Lisa Cooper, Democratic Services Manager and Monitoring Officer; also Mrs Julie Hollands from the Democratic Services Office; and Mrs Maria Benford from HR Department. Also joining us is Andrew Lana from IEC. Also participating to a greater or lesser degree this evening, depending on how well the technology behaves, we have Claire Fletcher and James Waite looking after the software and YouTube for us. Any member wishing to speak should indicate by please typing your surname only in the chat facility. Officers wishing to respond to members' questions, please type interject. The chat facility is persistent in that it cannot be deleted, and any inappropriate use will be deemed as a potential code of conduct matter. It is a requirement that all members will have read the paperwork published on the website. Members are reminded not to press leave meeting if you need to leave the room. Please remember to turn off your cameras and your microphones. They should be off already. To those members of the public watching on YouTube, I wish to explain that there may come a time this evening when coverage will be stopped. This will be the case if our discussions are likely to involve information which is exempt from disclosure to the public. If we reach that point, I will inform you and make it quite clear that the transmission will be stopped and it will be restarted afterwards. Thank you. And now to agenda item number 1. Seeking approval from the council to approve and sign the minutes of the council meetings held on the 6th of July and the extraordinary meeting held on the 18th of August as the correct record. If any members have any comments, please indicate in the chat.
Agreed.
Thank you. So do I have your approval to sign at a later date the minutes of the council meetings held on the 6th of July and the 18th of August as a correct meeting?
Agreed.
Meetings. Thank you.
Agreed.
So in the absence of any objections, I'll take that as a confirmation. Thank you. Apologies for absence, please, Lisa.
Councillors Harmer and Giawan, Chairman.
Thank you. Item 3, disclosures of interest. Are there any disclosures by members of personal and disclosable pecuniary interests in matters on the agenda? If so, please declare the nature of any such interest and whether members regard the personal interest as prejudicial under the terms of conduct, code of conduct. So I have Councillor Thomas, please. If I can ask you to declare your interest, please, Councillor Thomas.
Yes, my interest is in CB 2043 as a director of the Housing Corporation.
Thank you. Councillor Cortell.
Thank you, Chair. My interest is in CB 2041 as a former member of the Executive Committee of D4B Democracy for Bexhill.
Thank you. Councillor Madeley.
Thank you, Chair. Yes, mine is also as a past member on CB 2041 of the DB4. Sorry. Yes.
D4B. The other way around.
D4B, thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Bayliss.
Yes, so Mr. Chairman, same declaration of interest, former member of Democracy for Bexhill, that's CB 2041.
Thank you. Councillor Gray.
I have the same announcement that I was a former member of D4B and also I'm the other representative for Citizens Advice Bureau, which is coming up, I think, Agenda 7.
Thank you very much. Councillor Coleman.
Like others, CB 2041 as a former member of Democracy for Bexhill.
Thank you. Councillor Langlands.
Yes, exactly the same for me. CB 2041, a former member of D4B.
Thank you. I'll find a way of paraphrasing this when we start 2041. Councillor Burns. Burn.
Thank you. Thank you, Chair. Yeah, the same declaration, former committee member of D4B. So that's item 2041.
Thank you. Mr. Johnston.
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry, I couldn't get the message to disappear at the top in the previous. Can I just remind members, if you've been reminded in the chat, you should say whether it's personal or personal and prejudicial. I think all the previous ones have been personal, so there's not a problem with them. From my perspective, Chairman, it's minute reference LGP 2013, if it's called and the detail is discussed.
Thank you. Councillor Clark.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. First of interest in CB 2018 as a member of East Sussex County Council. CB 2043 as a potential member of the Alliance Health Homes.
Yes, thank you. Councillor Oliver? Councillor Oliver? That's it.
Personal declaration 20/41, member of Democracy for Bexhill, resigned in April 2019.
Thank you, Councillor Oliver. Just a reminder from Democratic Services that we should declare whether it's personal or personal and prejudicial. Councillor Madeley has made hers quite clearly personal. Tony Leonard, Dr. Leonard.
Thank you, Chairman. It's the same item as Mr. Johnson. That's LGP 2013, personal and prejudicial. Leave the room if it's discussed.
Thank you, Dr. Leonard. Councillor Maynard?
Chairman, have you missed my personal declaration?
I haven't seen you yet, Councillor Barnes, but I will get to you as soon as I've called Councillor Maynard.
Thank you very much indeed, Chairman. My interest is a personal interest as an executive member on East Sussex County Council, CB 2018. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Barnes?
I think, Chairman, I
personal interest as a potential director of the housing.
Thank you, Councillor Barnes. I think you finished speaking. You're having problems with your bandwidth at the moment, your connection. Councillor Field, and then I'll come to Councillor Mrs. Earl-Williams because I haven't got anything on the list, but I will come to you. Councillor Field.
Personal interest, CB 2018, non-executive member of East Sussex County Council.
Thank you. Councillor Mrs. Earl-Williams, I'm sorry, I didn't have your name in the list, in the chat list.
No, I'm sorry. I belatedly decided to declare personal interest in the previous item of Councillor Field. I hadn't thought it was necessary, but
yeah.
Okay.
Thank you. And remind councillors that they should reiterate them. And obviously, if you remember any as we go through, please mention them. So I'm now going to agenda item 4. Chairman's communications. I'll begin this evening by paying tribute to a former councillor, Councillor Joanne Gadd, who passed away earlier this month. Joanne was elected to the council in May 1999 and during her 16 years on the council served on the Licensing and General Purposes Committee and Overview and Scrutiny Committee. She was chair of the council in 2008-2009 and Mayor of Bexhill on 2 occasions. I offer our collective condolences to her family and friends, but 2 councillors have asked to make personal statements, and I'll first ask Councillor Maynard.
Thank you very much indeed, Chairman, and it gives me no pleasure at all to be having to pay tribute to yet another former councillor who's passed during this very, very strange time that we find ourselves in. I mean, Joanne did reach a great age, but she had been quite ill for some time. But for most of us, we remember her, inverted commas, her in her prime, and she was certainly a great character, had a fantastic sense of humour, and frankly, across the political divide, was somebody who was well respected and well liked through anybody who actually came into contact with her. You've alluded to the fact that she had a long service of 16 years on the council. She was not only chairman, but mayor twice. In fact, the only person to date anyway that's ever served twice as Bexhill mayor, because she took civic responsibility very seriously. She enjoyed it and she did it with good humour and was hugely capable in that particular role. That was her natural role, one has to say. She did an enormous amount of fundraising for charities in her times as mayor and chairman, and that's something that I don't think many who knew her will ever forget. She was absolutely passionate about fundraising for the charities that she cared about, and one of those in particular was very personal to her, given her experience with her own child. The other thing I think I would have to add is that Joanne had a unique passion for planning as well. She may have served on other committees, but she served on planning, I think, for pretty much all of her time on council. She took that very, very seriously, but she also massively enjoyed the social interaction with other members of the planning committee and indeed the officers. She'll be well remembered by anybody who knew her. And once again, a very sad loss for Bexhill. She was a unique and indomitable character. You certainly knew if she liked you or not, but I'm glad to say she warmed to most people, and she certainly did a lot for the people of Bexhill throughout her 16-year tenure as a councillor. So she'll be very well remembered, I'm sure, by anybody who knew her. And I'd like to pass on not only my condolences to her family, but also that of the whole Conservative group. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you, Councillor Maynard. I'll call on Councillor Mrs. Earl Williams, who wants to make a point, but I also see that Councillor Johnson does, so I'll come to you, Councillor Johnson, after Mrs. Earl Williams. Thank you. Mrs. Earl Williams.
Thank you, Chairman. Joanne and I joined the council along with several of the other councillors present here tonight in 1999, as Carl said. And Joanne and I became friends very quickly. As been said, she was a colourful character, full of life, who always looked immaculate, had a reputation for her large wardrobe of hats. Not being a hat person myself and needing a very small size, she took it upon herself to take me shopping for my year as mayor. To say it was chaos would be true, as nothing fitted me, and I must have tried every hat on in the store to no avail. She was a terrible giggler, which was something we shared in those days. Joanne had a bad back, so our lovely staff in Democratic Services got her a special chair with a cushion, which is in place for, I think it was planning meeting. What they didn't tell her was that it was adjustable. It was an adjustable chair, and as you will know, Joanne did not have a sylph-like figure. She sat down and the chair just shot down, leaving her chin level with the table. Everybody laughed, but Joanne and I were helpless, so much so we had to leave the meeting. She did get me into trouble on many occasions. She decided to make a nice bowl of punch for her inauguration as mayor the first time. She said, "I've never done this before." So we stood in the staff kitchen concocting this brew, with me as chief taster, with Joanne adding goodness knows what to it, and saying, "It does taste better though, doesn't it? We are getting more tipsy by the minute." So I had to keep out of the way of Ivor Brampton, who was leader of the council at the time and could be a formidable figure. Stuart Earl, my late husband, joined the council in 2002 and coined the name for her as Hyacinth Bouquet, which he was probably the only person that would have dared to say that. But she used to hold her little supper parties at her home to raise a considerable amount, as Carl said, for the Conservative Party. She was a wonderful fundraiser, and she was also a wonderful cook. And Paul Bryan, who always got it wrong, and Stuart and I acted as general dog's bodies. They were happy times, and I have many happy memories. I would like to take this occasion to send love to Jane, her daughter, and say that Joanne adored her grandsons, who were hugely important to her. She was a larger-than-life figure who will be missed by many of us. Thank you.
Thank you, Mrs. Earl Williams. Councillor Johnson. Keep trying, Councillor Johnson. I can see your finger trying for the mute button. Still muted. Councillor Johnson, I'll come back to you at the end of my communications if you've managed to unmute yourself, but you might have to leave and come back. Thank you. Since our last meeting, I've managed to attend only one virtual parish council meeting, and that was at Pect Parish Council on the 21st of July. I had hoped to be attending some in person by now, but the possibility of a second spike in coronavirus has made this unlikely for the foreseeable future. In fact, probably for the rest of my chairman year. On the 4th of August, I joined in with the Heart of Sidling virtual carnival procession, where a small group of children entertainers walked around the streets of Sidling, helped by the Bexhill Lions, who gave out free gifts to the children. Marvellous idea to fill the gap left by the cancellation of Bexhill Carnival. Unfortunately, they were hampered by the weather, with one parade being cancelled due to a mini heat wave, and the rescheduled parade then cancelled due to the wind and rain. I was able to join in with another substitute event on the 31st of August when the Bexhill 100 Motor Club, who were unable to hold their annual car show in the Polegrove, took to the streets of Bexhill in a cavalcade of 50 classic cars. Had the show gone ahead, it would have been their 16th, and they were hoping of breaking a £100,000 mark for their charity collections. I shudder to think how much Rother charities have lost due to coronavirus. But I'm also confident that we will get back to some kind of normality by next year's main fundraising season. Friday the 11th of September marked the start of the Great British September Clean. Alas, even before last Monday's tightening of the COVID restrictions, it was almost impossible for environmental groups across Rother to hold litter picks. So I went out litter picking on my own in Bexhill on day one with the chain, as a marker to the start of this initiative. This initiative continues until the 27th of September, so I'd encourage people to do what they can to help keep Rother litter free. On Monday the 14th of September, I accompanied the Mayor of Bexhill, Councillor Lynn Langlands, as she presented the Bexhill Council community bus, of which she and I are both directors and drivers, with the Bexhill Town crest in recognition of their service to the community on what was the 40th anniversary of their first run. On Wednesday the 16th, I was invited to the opening of the 2021 football season by attending the first home game for Bexhill United at the Polegrove. The club, which rents the ground from Rother District Council, has made a good start to the season, and I'd like to thank them for their invitation and their socially distanced hospitality. It was also good to see that cricket managed to make a short return to the Polegrove and other pitches across the district in August and September. Across Rother, we have some amazing sports teams and individual competitors. Our residents in more normal times through Freedom Leisure and Active Rother can access sporting and fitness activities from pickleball in Bexhill to health walks and walking cricket in Rye. Also on the sports front, Bowls England have launched their Let's Bowl initiative to get people bowling this summer, or what's left of this summer, through one-to-one free taster sessions at local clubs. This Thursday, I'll be on the receiving end of a free coaching session from the Bexhill Bowling Club. Earlier today, I was able to mark another 40th anniversary. Today is the 40th United Nations International Day of Peace, and I attended a non-religious, non-denominational vigil at the Bexhill Peach Pole on Galley Hill. I'd like to make a plea to members, understandably perhaps, that because of coronavirus, I seem to be finding ways of representing Rother in Bexhill. But I'm conscious that Bexhill, along with Battle, Rye and Winchelsea, have their own mayors, and so would rural members please note that I would welcome the opportunity to visit events and locations across the district, as long as it's safe to do so. I will end my communications on United Nations International Peace Day with a quote from the Dalai Lama. Peace does not mean an absence of conflicts. Differences will always be there. Peace means solving these differences through peaceful means, through dialogue, education, knowledge, and through humane ways. Thank you. I will just go back now and see if Councillor Johnson can unmute himself. Yes.
Thank you, Chairman. Technical problem. Joanne Gadd. My first recollections of Joanne Gadd were in 1999, when we both became Rother District Councillors. She was colourful and friendly, but at the same time, she was a formidable lady whose opinions you differed with at your peril. She always had the interests of St Mark's residents uppermost in her mind. As Mayor of Bexhill, she fundraised tirelessly, and during her tenure, the Mayor's Ball was a social occasion not to be missed, raising thousands of pounds for her chosen charities. She was the hyacinth bouquet of the council and will be fondly remembered. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Johnson. Right, on to agenda item 5. There are no questions from the member of public that have been submitted. Item number 6, no questions from members have been submitted. And now to item 7, to receive a report of the Cabinet on matters for determination by full council at its meetings held on the 27th of July, 17th of August and 7th of September. Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Chairman. I would like to move the reports of the meetings held on the 27th of July and the 7th of September be approved and adopted. The report arising from the meeting held on the 17th of August has been dealt with by full council on the 18th of August.
Seconded.
Seconded by, was that Councillor Prochak?
Councillor Prochak.
Thank you, Councillor Prochak. I shall now call over the reports. 27th of July, CB 2018, the Ravenside Gateway Roundabout Improvement Project. CB 2019, Street Naming and Property Numbering Policy. CB 2020, Consultation Report, Draft Rother District Council Environmental Strategy. 7th of September 2020, CB 2041, Bexhill Community Governance Review. Councillor Bayliss, you calling that over?
Yes, I am, Chairman. Thank you.
Thank you. CB 2042, Bexhill Citizens Advice. CB 2043, Alliance Homes Rothers Limited Business Plan. And CB 2044, Residential Development at Blackfriars Battle. Right. I move then that the whole of the report, with the exception of the reserve minute, be approved and adopted. Over to you, Lisa, for a roll call, please.
Thank you, Chairman. So just to confirm, this is to approve the minutes that have not been reserved for discussion. So members, I will read your names in alphabetical order. Please state for, against or abstain. John Barnes.
For.
Mary Barnes.
For.
Bayliss.
For.
Bird.
For.
Brewerton.
For.
Brown.
For.
Byrne.
For.
Carroll.
For.
Clark.
For.
Coleman. Coleman. Mrs. Cook.
For.
Courtell.
For.
Curtis.
For.
Dixon.
For.
Drayson.
For.
Mrs. L. Williams.
For.
Errington.
For.
Field.
For.
Ganley.
For.
Gray.
For.
Johnson.
For.
Mrs. Kirby Green.
For.
Langlands.
For.
Madeley.
For.
Maynard.
For.
Mia.
For.
Mooney. Mooney. Norton,
4.
Oliver,
4.
Osborne,
4.
Proshak,
4.
Stevens,
4.
Thomas,
4.
Tenpe,
4.
Vinehall.
4.
Thank you, Chairman. That's carried.
Thank you, Lisa. I've just seen Councillor Coleman wants to actually say something. I don't know if that's connected with his loss of.
Yes, hi, Chair. Sorry, my computer crashed. I've just logged on my iPad just to say that my vote was 4.
Yeah, I think it's counted as an abstention, but that's fine. Thank you. Right, I shall now proceed to deal with the reserved minutes. Councillor Bayliss.
Thank you, Chair. It's an absolute honour to be able to propose this the motion before full council this evening. To summarise the position, Bexhill residents have repeatedly expressed support for setting up a town council for Bexhill. Over 2,200 people responded to the most recent consultation, which ran partly through lockdown. As I was reminded this afternoon, the response was large enough sample for members to have confidence that the views expressed are representative of the population as a whole. Yes, there were people who opted for the status quo, but nothing I have heard has persuaded me that we should put the decision on hold or to not proceed. But that's not to say that we didn't listen to all the views. Councillors are very mindful that we are in a recession and that finances are tight for many of our families in Bexhill. We were in agreement on the steering group that that major spending decisions and the setting up costs should be left to town councillors who get elected. Indeed, I hope that this will be a feature of the first election campaign. If people are really concerned about spending and council taxes going up, I urge them to stand and let's have a proper debate about costs. And I know that the chair of the Anti-Poverty Task and Finish group will be looking to make sure that the most disadvantaged families are protected from council tax increases in the medium to long term. So there will be safeguards in place that are being explored even before an election has been held. The second point I'd like to make is about the pandemic and whether this is a good time to introduce a town council. I think it's a valid point, but I think there's a counter argument to be made. The pandemic has brought out a community spirit and active volunteering involving all ages and from all backgrounds. If we can tap into that spirit, then the town council could be launched on a tide of goodwill and voluntary action. I know that when lockdown was introduced, the villages and Rye and Battle were able to get their mutual aid programmes up and running much more quickly than in Bexhill because of their local council infrastructure. More reason to support setting up the same in Bexhill. So to sum up, I shall be voting tonight on behalf of the 8,631 people who supported setting up a town council in the 2017 Community Governance Review and who were ignored by the previous Conservative administration. I'll be voting in favour to fulfil a promise I made at the 2019 District Council elections and the 788 people who voted for me in Central Ward, Bexhill. I have a democratic mandate that even our opponents in Bexhill Central can't disagree with. I'll be voting in favour of the motion this evening to recognise the views of the 1,729 people who said they wanted a town council for Bexhill in 2020. My only regret in this whole endeavour is that campaigners like Margaret Jones and John Lee are not here to witness this historic occasion. They were deprived of seeing the formation of a locally led town council, but we vote today to honour their memory. Chairman, I move the motion.
Thank you.
I second that. Councillor Langlands.
Thank you, Councillor Langlands. The debate's open. Councillor Mary Barnes.
Thank you, Chairman. There is one sector of the community that Councillor Bayliss hasn't taken into account, and that is the staff of Rother District Council. We've lost a lot of staff just lately, and following tonight's discussion, I think we probably will be losing more. I'm very, very concerned about the workload that we're actually putting on to our staff at this particular time. We've got COVID to think about, and we can hear from the health advisors to the government that we are expecting a spike in the number of cases, which is going to throw even more particularly onto Malcolm, who was really first rate the last time round. But really, this is the wrong time to be talking about a council. Please, please put it off for a year. Just let everybody gather their thoughts. Let's make it easier for our hard-working officers of the council. We are so quick to always praise our officers, and why we suddenly have to put this huge amount of extra workload on them is just, to me, beyond comprehension. So I'm very sorry, but I did feel somebody needs to speak up for all those people who will be working very, very hard to try and keep all the balls in the air. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Mrs. Barnes. Anybody else wish to speak? Councillor Coleman.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. When considering this, I have to wear several hats, like many members. The first hat is obviously as Cabinet spokesperson for young people and child poverty. Now, in terms of young people, I was quite disappointed to see a low turnout from young people in this consultation, but then there has been in pretty much every consultation that Rother District Council has ever run. And that's something that we definitely need to look at changing in the future. It's something I've been looking at. I can make the commitment here now to anybody listening that I will do everything I can in my Cabinet spokesperson position to promote youth participation in local government. Obviously, it's not the first thing that a lot of young people are thinking about, but it's very important that their voices are heard. And I know that with the youth report that I've been writing, with the work such as the Youth Summit that we held earlier this year, and the Youth Council, which got a Bexhill Youth Council, which was set up just before this pandemic. Hopefully in the future, more young people will be able to take part in our democratic processes, because it's always young people whose voices are quite often not heard, and hopefully in the future their voices will be heard more. So that's one of my hats. My next hat is as chair of the Anti-Poverty Task and Finish Group. Now, one of the things that we're looking at on the Anti-Poverty Task and Finish Group is a review into the council tax reduction scheme, as Councillor Bayliss mentioned briefly. And obviously my hope would be that we can return to up to 100% reduction, but I'm sure we'll find a solution which is financially viable given the current circumstances. That to say that, yes, council tax will probably go up when we have a Bexhill Town Council, but we will be doing everything we can on the Anti-Poverty Task and Finish Group to make sure that we are supporting those on lower incomes, that we're improving the services that the council already runs to support those on lower incomes, and making sure that people who cannot afford to pay their council tax won't be asked to pay much more. And I'm also very glad on that similar point that that no services are going to be transferred until we've got town councillors elected, which means there aren't going to be any service dumps or anything like that, which I know is always a worry when you set up a new type of governance. So we can, be rest assured that people will elect town councillors who will provide the services that they want to provide for the cost that they're willing to pay. The next hat that I have to wear is as a member for Sidley. Now, the majority of my residents in Sidley who took part in this recent consultation, 74%, said they wanted a Bexhill Town Council, and I have to consider that. And I also have to consider the fact that one of my 5 election pledges, like many of the people in this meeting tonight had election pledges, was to deliver a Bexhill Town Council, and my residents voted me, at least in part, on that basis. And finally, the final hat I have to wear is as someone who believes in democracy. And as someone who believes in democracy, we have had a positive indication at every single stage from the residents of Bexhill, from the over 4,000 petition signatories, right when this whole thing first began, to the nearly 9,000 initial consultation responses in favour of a town council in 2017, the flipping of all but one of the seats in Bexhill, formerly held by the Conservatives, for councillors in favour of or who have pledged to deliver a town council for Bexhill, and then yet another positive consultation result in the thousands, considering most of our consultations receive responses maybe 400, 300, 500, in the thousands. That's not something to be sniffed at. Every stage we've had positive results, and very few people at every stage have voiced themselves against a town council. So I really hope this is going to proceed, and I hope the councillors vote for this. And any future town councillors who are listening, anyone who wants to become a town councillor, wants to stand for election, I would suggest you have a read of the consultation documents, listen to what all of the residents have to say, and in particular, I'd like to promote the Bexhill Labour Party's response, which provides what I think is a really good plan for a low-cost, really effective town council. But it's up for the town councillors to decide, and I hope that we get the opportunity to deliver that. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Coleman. Before I call on Councillor Courtell, I should have gone through the declaration of interest again. I'm sorry, before that one. So I had for that one being members of, or previous members and post holders in Democracy for Bexhill were Councillor Bayliss, Byrne, Coleman, Courtell, Gray, Langlands, Madeley and Oliver. Have I missed anyone?
Yes, please, Chairman.
Oh yeah, no, it's just on declarations of interest. Councillor Maynard, I'll be back to you. Don't worry.
No, for this particular agenda item.
Oh yeah,
sorry, because Councillor Coleman has alluded to the council tax reduction scheme, and because I will allude to it as well as he has, and Councillor Mrs. Bayliss has, I'll declare an interest in the executive member of the Sussex County Council.
Thank you, Councillor Maynard.
Thank you.
Councillor Courtell.
Thank you, Chair. Public demand for a Bexhill Town Council is overwhelming. 93.5% supported a Bexhill Town Council during the first consultation, and that was at a time of an exceptionally high response. When I gained election in May 2019, I had people voting for me from a wide range of political views because they were appalled that their then councillors in Bexhill Central Ward had ignored the wishes of the overwhelming majority of their electors. It became the defining issue of the campaign. When we had the second consultation under the new administration, despite a lower turnout because people were fed up with being asked the same question again, 8 of the 9 Bexhill wards supported a Bexhill Town Council by over a 2/3 majority. And even the ward with the lowest response in favour of town council responded with 64% in favour and only 36% against. Because a town council will be local, the members would know the situation on the ground better than a remote organisation would. During lockdown, BEAT, the Bexhill Emergency Action Team, an organisation run by Bexhill Ward councillors and supported by over 100 volunteers, organised essential services such as shopping and dog walking for vulnerable residents in the absence of a town council. There was a tremendous effort by Rother as well, and with their hub, and that effort could be taken over by a town council and relieve Rother of an essential service. By contrast, Wainwright Road COVID-19 testing centre in my ward, managed by central government, has underutilised medical staff while there's considerable demand for tests. This is because if too many people are tested, existing laboratory capacity would be overwhelmed. Yet there are numerous laboratories within the NHS that haven't even been invited to help. Trying to organise something that's too big is less likely to work efficiently. Similarly, remote officials of East Sussex County...
Sorry, is there something to do with the Bexhill governance here? We've strayed on to the NHS and COVID.
I was pointing out the difference between localism and a large organisation. My next point is about East Sussex County Council being more remote than Rother or a Bexhill Town Council. Is that acceptable information?
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Cortell. Your time was just up. I was going to give you a little bit of leeway because I interrupted you, but thank you. Councillor Prochak.
Sorry, could I just conclude then? I do apologise. All I wanted to say was the more local service, the more likely that there's going to be a higher level of customer satisfaction.
Thank you. Your point is well made, Councillor Cortell. Thank you. Councillor Prochak.
Thank you so much, Chairman. As a Liberal Democrat member of this alliance, I am absolutely thrilled that this has got to this stage now. Councillor Bayliss and Councillor Clark will remember the campaigning we did years ago to collect signatures, and then the regulations changed, and thank goodness the Localism Act came in. And the Localism Act came in from the Conservatives, and I can remember a quote from Sajid Javid saying that localism and devolution was at the heart of Conservative policy. And I think Councillor Cortell has mentioned this, but in my mind, decisions that are taken locally, closest to the people who they're going to affect, then the more likely they are to be successful and cost effective and not a waste of money because they're not right. And I do believe in that so deeply. The other thing is that, as already been mentioned, we are the most centralised government in the whole of Western Europe. And I am quite surprised, as it seems to be the tone at the moment from the Conservative group, that they are likely to vote against this. But I'm surprised because the thing is that the whole effort of having a town council is actually devolution. It's devolution, and the Conservatives now are on a path to having unitary government, and my goodness, we are going to need our town and parish councils if that's imposed upon us. We've won the debate, as has been pointed out, we've won the debate twice over. We could say 3 times over with the local elections, with the result of the local elections, which have been described. We've won the debate with the public. We've won the debate with Bexhill residents. Please, let's win the debate here with Rother District councillors. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Prochak. Councillor Maynard, was that you wishing to speak, or was that me missing you declaring an interest?
I'd like to speak, but I'm also declaring an interest as an executive member of East Sussex County Council prior to speaking.
Yeah, that's okay. Fine. Thank you, Councillor Maynard.
Thank you very much indeed, Chairman. And I don't know why Councillor Mrs Prochak would be surprised with the approach of individual Conservative councillors, because what we are concerned, and always have been concerned every time we've gone out and asked for people's support in voting for us, is to give the very best value for money for residents, at whatever tier of local government that may be. And within the Conservative group, we've never had a whip on this matter. The arguments for and against have been very well rehearsed, but the figures given tonight give a very skewed picture of what the actual reality was. because I'm not proposing to debate the outcome of the elections last May. But members of the Alliance would do well to remember that because of Brexit, because of Theresa May, maybe, and numerous other factors, we did very badly in the local elections, not just in Bexhill, but in the rural areas as well. But don't forget that over 6,000 people voted Conservative still in Bexhill across the whole of the town, considerably more than voted for the Labour Party. And even if we move to December 2019 in the general election, we can see, in fact, I believe that the Labour Party's share of the vote actually declined. The fact of the matter is that we're here to represent all of the people, whether they voted for us or not. My own views about a town council are very well known and very well documented in previous meetings that we've had. I remain personally opposed for the reasons that I've given on many, many occasions. But I'm genuinely worried, Chairman, by some of the comments that have again been alluded to by Councillor Bayliss and again by Councillor Coleman this evening about the anti-poverty task group and how that relates to this issue of a town council, and how one of the Labour Party pledges during the last election about having zero council tax for a number of people, about repealing that we brought in that made people pay 20%, just a small contribution towards council tax. And it's been said before by Councillor Bayliss that would only cost, I think it was £40,000 or £60,000 to the Rother purse. But let's be very clear, Chairman, that again is a misrepresentation of the whole picture. Because if you were to bring in zero council tax to somehow support your creation of a town council, what you would see is about £500,000 less for the county council, for the cash-strapped county council. So you'd actually hit the people you say you want to help the very hardest. And I'm absolutely convinced that those in the independent group on Rother District Council will surely not support a yet another Labour Party policy which has wheedled its way, it seems, into the policies of the Bexhill Alliance. And Councillor Bayliss may smile, and she probably will if she gets her way, because it seems to me that just 3 councillors on Rother District Council are having a very disproportionate role on the council as a whole. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Maynard. Councillor Clark.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. We can easily go over all old ground here, and it gets a bit wearing after a while. I just would like to make a few comments. When you look at the results of the last district elections, the joining authority, Wilden, Conservatives, I don't think lost any seats. So how you can say it was all about Brexit, I don't know. The Minister for Communities of the Conservative government has always favoured the town council. I'm coming up to my 30th year as a local councillor, and I always thought it's quite simple. They're there to serve the residents' wishes, and their wishes were for a town council. Those who didn't vote, that was their choice. Many of us are elected at local elections with election rates of around 30%. In fact, some councillors are elected with about 20% of actual votes cast, so you can play that card the way you like. What I do hope is that a Bexhill Town Council is not going to be filled up by current Bexhill Rother councillors. I hope it's all new people with passion and desire to do good things for Bexhill. I certainly would not be putting myself forward. I don't know why we're muddying the waters. The issue about the council tax reduction scheme is a separate issue. We have a council tax reduction scheme which residents can apply for, and over 80 people have been successful. So all those people who are struggling can be dealt with on an individual basis in a very fair way. So that is a matter for Rother District Council. As to why that is muddying the waters with the issue of town councils, I don't know. I will be voting for town council because I think it's a democratic process and should carry on. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Clark. Councillor Vinehall.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to say 2 things. I am the only independent rural member in the Rother District Council, and the Bexhill Town Council was on my manifesto, despite the fact I don't live in Bexhill, and none of the residents of Westfield or Settlescombe or Three Oaks live in Bexhill. But to me, it was a very, very important thing to achieve this, to bring Bexhill into parity with the rest of Rother. I won my election by a significant majority in what is a very deeply conservative ward. So I think Councillor Maynard's comments might be taken in perspective of that. But what I really wanted to do was to debunk the rather disingenuous comments made at Cabinet by Councillor Maynard and just now by Councillor Barnes on staff leaving Rother District Council. I made inquiries with the Human Resources Department, and all this information is from them and from the same in Eastbourne and Hastings. We have had 30 leavers at the end of the year that have been recorded, and that represents a staff turnover of about 13%. The previous year, before this administration, it was 12%, so much the same. This compares to Hastings at 13% and Eastbourne at 14%. So all three authorities have pretty much the same turnover of staff. So nothing unusual or different at Rother District Council. I'll tell you why they left. 10 left to join another public sector body, and they were just for normal reasons that people leave. Career opportunity, perhaps not available just now at Rother District. 3 left to join the private sector, 5 retired, 4 moved away from the area, 1 failed the probation, 1 didn't start at all, and 5 ended temporary contracts, and 1 sadly died. So one can hardly say that there's an outflow of employees from Rother District Council. It is very much the same as our neighbouring authorities. And I really hope that the Conservative group stop trying to put this information around. And I would ask Councillor Carl Maynard, to stop shaking his head at what are facts provided by Human Resources. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Vinehall. Councillor Byrne.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to go back to talking again about the governance review. What we've had is representations from both of the largest national political parties. Now, I think that during the last council elections, there was a resounding rejection of party politics in favour of local politics, and that the independent candidates, who were all in favour of a town council, represented a more local voice. And that local voice was going to be amplified by the creation of a town council. So I don't think it was Brexit. I don't think it was any of the external factors. I think it was that people felt that they wanted, and Councillor Cortell alluded to this, they wanted an organisation that was closer to them. They felt independent members in Bexhill would be closer to them rather than representing a party line from Westminster, and that they then felt that if those independent members went on to recommend and achieve the creation of a town council, that again would be a great step of localism and a way forward for Bexhill. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Councillor Byrne. Councillor Barnes, John Barnes.
Thank you, Chairman. I think there's a certain rewriting of history going on tonight, but I don't propose to follow in that vein. What I would recall is that a number of us who had doubts about a town council had in mind the possible parishing of Bexhill in more than one body. And I think what the last election did do, and indeed the recent consultation, is convince me, amongst others, that a town council is actually what Bexhill wanted. That said, although I have some sympathy with my wife's view that the staff at Rother are pretty burdened at the moment, I'm not going to talk about people leaving. Councillor Vinehall will be glad to know, but I think he would admit that they are under considerable pressure because of COVID at the moment. And therefore I had some sympathy with the argument put forward by Councillor Mary Barnes, but I have to say, as against that, there is a good deal to be said for having the elections alongside the county council election rather than waiting 2 years for the next district, 3 years for the next district council election. However, I am worried by a number of points made by the Labour group. First of all, I think to hold out the notion of some kind of council tax relaxation for a small part of the electorate would, as Councillor Maynard has said, actually hit the social service budget of the county council pretty hard. And I think actually many of the people who would think to benefit would actually suffer from the onward consequences. But rather more than that, when I hear Councillor Coleman talk about a low-cost council, I look back at the consultation, and it not only was in favour of a town council, but it was in favour of the transfer of a very large number of services, both those already done by Rother through its Bexhill measures, but also additional services. And I would say very firmly tonight that I think if you are going to establish a town council, it needs to be one that is more than a talking shop. It's one that actually takes over a considerable range of powers and does exercise local control over those powers. Please do not fool the electors of Bexhill by pretending that this is going to be low cost. If it's going to be effective, if it's going to be more than a talking shop, then it needs actually to be a full-powered, fully empowered town council. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Barnes. Councillor Osborne.
Thank you, Chairman. Yeah, well, just to debunk the myth that there's a Tory whip on this, I would just say that I'll go back to the recommendation as printed on page 7, just to say that I will be voting in favour of the recommendation as printed. And I will go say that, you know, I'll be consistent with what I've said for the last probably 3 or 4 years, in that as a former mayor and chairman of Rye Town Council, as a current chairman of a parish council in Claydon where I live, and as someone who lives 18 miles away from Bexhill, who could I be someone to say no, Bexhill cannot have a town council? So I will say, as I've always done, if Bexhill wants a town council and Bexhill are going to pay for a town council, I will vote in favour of that, and you can crack on. So I don't have any problem with that at all. So I will be voting in favour later on this evening, very soon, hopefully. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, I share your wish. Thank you, Councillor Osborne. Councillor Mear.
Chairman, I can be very brief. I agree with everything that Councillor Osborne has said, and I'm very pleased to say that. Like him, or slightly differently, I have been chair of Fairlight Parish Council, and I served on that council for 10 years. So I feel I know something of what I'm talking about, and others here are in a similar position. We outside Bexhill know what it's like to be involved in town and parish councils. They work extremely well. They bring decision making close to the people. They give the local people control over their own finances and over what they do. It's an excellent idea, and I'm very pleased that the people of Bexhill have so strongly supported this. As with Councillor Vinehall, I mentioned this in my own manifesto. I think it is good all round for the district, and it's good all round for Bexhill, and I commend it to councillors. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Mear. Sorry? Okay, Councillor Oliver.
Thank you, Chairman. I agree with so many of the points put over by my colleagues in the Alliance this evening. I was very much involved in bringing the Community Governance Review petition forward to Rother District Council, and it was one of the first opportunities that I had to be involved in what I've identified as being local governance. And it's all about the localism. I can remember Sajid Javid at the LGA conference at Milton Keynes said, this is an absolutely vital way to deliver. And I thought that was a rousing sort of message from him. Brexit had nothing to do with this. Wilden didn't, as Charlie Clark pointed out, have an issue with Brexit at all. It was all about giving greater democracy, governance to the people of Bexhill in line with the rest of Rother. And I think that this is where it starts. It starts at the bottom upwards. And this is not a Labour Party policy. This is an alliance policy. Those that were returned, 17 new councillors or 17 councillors arrived in the chamber last May off the back of providing local governance for the people of Bexhill. Bexhill shouldn't be operated by a district council. It will have the opportunity to evolve itself in the years ahead in order to be on parity with the other parishes and towns within Rother. I think it's absolutely vital, and I think it's a wonderful opportunity to us to move forward. And thank you. And I do hope that everyone will support where they were in 2019, May 2019, and support this motion this evening.
Thank you, Councillor Oliver. Councillor Langlands and then Councillor Kirby-Green. I think we should be winding this up though soon. So, Councillor Langlands.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I really do, as an independent in Bexhill, want to say that people before politics has been the way I've worked the whole time since I've actually come in. And this, to me, was a really, really important part of my brief when I got here. And I'm glad to say that it's now at the point where we can say hooray, I hope, and put it through. But, I mean, we've had lots of discussions. I think the consultations have actually brought about a really high level of response for a town council. And I think although it's going to be a fledgling organisation when it starts, it will need to establish a way of working for a very, very different future. And it may have a completely different set of priorities from what we're discussing here today. But I think having experienced a monumental change in the administration of Rother based on residents wanting better representation and real change, then I think we should be assured that if we vote for the creation of a town council here today, we'll see the same level of enthusiasm, vision and understanding of the needs of the residents and the businesses of Bexhill from all the newly elected town councillors. Half of the population of Rother is in Bexhill, and they haven't had a voice since 1974. They've had a charter of trustees that has no executive decision making, that get powers that can go on. So I think it's time to allow Bexhill to have an identity and a future that reflects the life and needs of the people who live there. And I'm fully in favour on it.
Can't hear you.
Councillor Drayson, you're on mute.
That's because I didn't unmute myself. I'm sorry. I had hoped to move to the vote just before now, but I see two more councillors have indicated they want to speak. So I should call on Councillor Kirby-Green and then Councillor Thomas. But unless anyone's got something new and vibrant to say, I will go into the vote after those two. So Councillor Kirby-Green.
Thank you, Chairman. I wasn't going to comment, but I can't let two comments that have been made go without responding. Firstly, Councillor Maynard did not suggest that the creation of a town council is a Labour policy, as Councillor Oliver suggested. He suggested that the reduction in council tax, which will have a knock-on impact on the East County Council, is a Labour policy, not the town council. Secondly, obviously, Councillor Vinehall lives in a very different world to me, because in Burwash, I'm not getting involved in who said what during elections, but in Burwash, I was absolutely pounded on the doorsteps about Brexit. I had lifelong voters that were saying they weren't going to vote for me, and my vote fell considerably, even in Burwash. So Brexit was an issue in the last election, believe me. If I had £1 for every time someone said they'd lost confidence in Theresa May, what an appalling Prime Minister she was, I'd be very wealthy. Thirdly, obviously a town council is going ahead, and I wish it very well. The only thing I would say is that we're talking about enthusiastic councillors. Most of the parish councils in Rother don't have contested elections. Most of them don't have enough parish councils on them. I know Battle has struggled as well. So I just hope that it is the case that everyone in Bexhill is very enthusiastic, and that in 5-6 years' time you don't have a situation where actually you're struggling to get councillors.
Thank you, Councillor Kelly-Green. I share your hope there that it isn't just people being appointed in the end. Councillor Thomas.
Chair, it's Councillor Richard Thomas, Chair, members of the public, members of the Council. First, I'd like to answer the point made there by Councillor Kirby-Green. Quite clearly, in the country as a whole, we did not see about 85% of Conservative candidates losing their seats in the local elections. So quite clearly, as has been reiterated many times, there is something specific to Bexhill going on. But I'd like to bring 2 new points into the debate. The first point is that there is not necessarily a conflict between having a town council and having a town council which can be run economically. And the way in which that can be done has already been shown by Rother District Council in its working with, on the one hand, Bexhill Heritage, and on the other hand, working with Bexhill in Bloom. Everybody knows that the seafront shelters have been restored to a far higher standard than would ever have been possible had they been done under the aegis of the Rother District Council. A splendid job has been done, and done at an extremely economic rate. And also, of course, the community has got involved in that. And so it's the whole community that feels a sense of pride in how wonderful those shelters now look. And the second point is that a town council is the normal organisation to bring in a neighbourhood plan. And a neighbourhood plan is the device which enables communities to say how they wish the future of their communities to develop. It's worked wonderfully in places like Robertsbridge, and it will work equally well here in Bexhill. So there are really vital functions which will greatly improve the standard of government, the standard of involvement, the standard of commitment of local people, which can be achieved without a tremendous imposition of the financial kind. And so this is yet another reason why we should all support the Town Council proposal tonight. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Councillor Bayliss, do you have anything to add as we wind up before we go to the vote?
No, I've nothing to add to what has been said. Could I? Is it possible to request a noted roll call vote on this matter, Chair? I mean, as opposed to, I know we are being asked to vote by roll call, but whether we can actually have a noted roll call vote. I think I need 3 other members to.
Yes, you do.
I'll support. Councillor Prochat will support.
I shall support a recorded vote. Councillor Byrne.
I support a recorded vote to Councillor Brereton.
And
yes, thank you, Councillor Portello. We've got the 4. Thank you. So, Lisa, it's obviously a roll call, but it will appear in the minutes.
Yes, that's correct, Chairman.
Thank you. If you could go ahead now, please. We're sorry, lost my place now. So we're voting on the reserved minute 2041 on the Bexhill Town Governance Review.
That's correct, Chairman.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Right, members, I will read your names in alphabetical order. Please state for, against, or abstain. John Barnes.
For.
Mary Barnes.
On this occasion, against.
Bayliss.
For.
Bird.
Abstain.
Brereton.
For.
Brown.
For.
Byrne.
For.
Carroll.
Against.
Clark,
For.
Coleman,
For.
Mrs Cook,
For.
Cortell,
4,
Curtis,
For.
Dixon,
For.
Drayson,
4,
Mrs Earl Williams,
4,
Errington,
4,
Field,
4,
Ganley, Ganley, Gray,
4,
Johnson,
Against.
Mrs Kirby Green,
Against.
Langlands,
4,
Maidley,
4.
Maynard,
Against.
Mere,
4,
Mooney,
Against.
Norton,
4.
Oliver,
4,
Osborne,
4,
Proshak,
4,
Stevens,
4,
Thomas,
4,
Tenpy,
4,
Vinehall.
That's 4.
That's carried, Chairman.
Thank you, Lisa. Before we move on, Councillor Dixon wants to interject before moving to the next item.
Thank you, Chairman. I'd just like to bring councillors' attention to CB 2044, the residential development of Blackfriars in Battle. I know we've agreed that, which is great. Can I just bring everyone's attention to a presentation that is happening on the 20th of October at 10 o'clock online through Teams to present the scheme. I've had a preview, being the ward member, I've had a preview of this, and it is excellent. I really would urge as many councillors as possible to get involved. Thank you, Chairman.
Yeah, thank you, Councillor Dixon. Can you make sure an email invite goes to everyone? Otherwise, we'll have the I can't get in saga that we often have. Thank you. Agenda item 8, to receive a report of the Executive Director in accordance with paragraph 17A of the Overview and Scrutiny Procedure Rules and paragraph 4 of the Budget and Policy Framework Procedure Rules of any urgent decisions taken at Cabinet meetings held on the 27th of July, the 17th of August and the 7th of September. Councillor Oliver.
I'd like to move that it be noted that no urgent decisions were taken by Cabinet at its meetings held on the 27th of July, 17th of August and the 7th of September.
Thank you. Seconder for that?
Seconded, Councillor Prochak.
Thank you, Councillor Prochak. As this matter is simply for noting, I don't intend to take a roll call vote for this. Now we're on to agenda item 9, to receive the report of the Licensing and General Purposes Committee on matters for determination by full council at its meetings held on the 13th of July and the 3rd of September. Councillor Mere.
I move that the reports of the meetings held on the 13th of July and the 3rd of September be approved and adopted.
Thank you. Seconded by Councillor Thomas.
Councillor Thomas, second, formally.
Thank you. Right. So I'll now call over the reports. 13th of July, LGP 2007, temporary street closure orders. No. 3rd of September, senior staff restructure, LGP 2013. I've got it on my print, but I think it was 14, wasn't it? Hang on.
Yes, please.
Yes. And I've got, well, I've got two moving, calling it over, but Councillor Field, as you're the Cabinet Member for it, I'll call you to move it, please. Mr. Johnson is redeclaring his personal interest. Is that right, Mr. Johnson?
Yes, Chairman. If any of the conversation is going to be on the detail, I think I should leave the meeting. If it's anything other, I am happy to stay. But if members are more comfortable with me going, then happy to do so.
Thank you. And Dr. Leonard, you've indicated the same, yes? Thank you, Dr. Leonard. Right, so move to the vote on the one that wasn't reserved. So I move that the whole of the report, with the exception of the reserved minute, be approved and adopted. Over to you again, Lisa.
Thank you, Chairman. So this is to agree the temporary street closure orders item. John Barnes.
Agreed.
Mary Barnes.
Agreed.
Bayliss.
Agreed.
Bird.
Agreed.
Brewerton.
Agreed.
Brown.
Agreed.
Byrne.
Agreed.
Carroll.
Agreed.
Clark.
Agreed.
Coleman.
Agreed.
Mrs. Cook.
Agreed.
Portell.
Agreed.
Curtis.
Agreed.
Dixon.
Agreed.
Drayson.
Agreed.
Mrs. L. Williams.
Agreed.
Errington.
Agreed.
Field.
Agreed.
Ganley.
Agreed.
Gray.
Agreed.
Johnson.
Agreed.
Mrs. Kirby Green.
Agreed.
Langlands.
Agreed.
Madeley.
Agreed.
Maynard.
Agreed.
Mear.
Agreed.
Mooney.
Agreed.
Norton.
Agreed.
Oliver.
Agreed.
Osborne.
Agreed.
Proshak.
Agreed.
Stevens.
Agree.
Thomas.
Agreed.
Tenby.
Agreed.
Vinehall.
Agreed.
That's carried, Chairman.
Thank you, Lisa. I shall now proceed to deal with the reserved minutes. However, before I call on Councillor Field, I must make members aware that I have received legal advice that when discussing this item, posts rather than post holders should be referred to. Members should refrain from mentioning any individual by name. By not naming the individuals involved, we can remain in public session. However, if members insist on referring to the individuals or wish to discuss the original confidential Appendix D tabled on the 3rd of September at the LGPC in relation to the proposed settlement package, then the meeting will need to move into closed session and the public and press excluded. So I'll call on Councillor Field.
Thank you,
Chairman,
Chair.
can I ask a point of order?
Sorry, who was that?
A point of order, Chairman. Where's the
Yes.
legal advice come from?
I believe it was Bevan Britton. I shall ask Lisa Cooper if she's got that detail.
Yes, Chairman, I understand it was from Bev Britton.
So is that the legal advice employed by the council, or is that the legal advice employed by the Alliance?
I would think that's probably the one employed in relation to this matter.
By the Alliance or by Rother District Council?
Councillor Oliver? I believe it's by the council.
Yes, it was agreed that it would be in the interest of all parties involved to appoint independent solicitors away from from Rother and Bevan Britton, who are very well known to us. They are a leading firm of local government specialists. Were given the opportunity of working with the HR team of Rother, the monitoring officer and the 151 officer, also with the unions that are involved with the respective directors.
So this is a legal team appointed by the Alliance. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you for your point of order, Councillor Maynard. Moving on, Councillor Field.
Yes, thank you, Chair. I would like to propose that we adopt this paragraph, and I believe, as it is being amended by Ms Cooper, she circulated an amendment which you've all had earlier this day. Now, for the avoidance of confusion and misunderstanding later, I need to explain that this initiative was initiated by the two existing executive directors who wrote a report in which they proposed that both executive director posts were deleted and replaced with one chief executive post. So we would lose two very senior people and gain one. And everything that's happened since then has flowed from this proposition. And I hope you'll all agree that all dynamic organisations can't stay still, they can't stagnate, they can, and indeed they do, change. And this change we're proposing now is a real opportunity both for the council and for the council staff to learn new skills. It will empower them and help them to move forward in their careers. It will provide huge opportunities for our existing staff and indeed any new staff working within this authority. It is an upheaval, and unfortunately the upheaval caused by COVID has delayed what it is we're trying to do. And sadly, I think this process and the delay has led to a good degree of uncertainty among the staff, but now we have the opportunity to move on and implement this plan. I think I can say that both posts have been filled by persons who've served this authority exceptionally well, with extreme professionalism and certainly on many occasions with a great deal of patience. But times change, requirements change, and this proposal will deliver change in both those areas. So I do hope members of the council can support it. Thank you.
The matter is open for debate. Councillor Osborne. Oh, sorry, just before you do, Mrs Cooper wants to interject.
Sorry, Chairman, I was just going to confirm to Councillor Field that the additional recommendation hasn't been circulated to all members. It was only done at the last minute, so it's only been circulated to yourself and the Chairman.
Right, so what do you want me to do with it? Will you read it out?
Yes, I can read it out.
That'd be helpful, I think, so we know what we're talking about. Thank you.
So the additional recommendation will be recommendation 9, and that says as follows: subject to being able to agree a mutually acceptable severance deal between the council and one of the executive directors, then the remaining executive director will become designate chief executive and head of paid service from Monday the 28th of September, when the new structure will commence.
Thank you very much. I wonder, and I know you're very busy, if it's possible perhaps just to email that very quickly around to members on their councillor email addresses so they've got the actual wording in front of them.
I can do that, or I can share it on my screen if that would be more helpful.
Oh, I think a screen share, thank you.
I'll try.
So there again, members, it's an additional recommendation, proposed amendment to this document. The recommendation be amended by including the following additional recommendation: 9, subject to being able to agree a mutually acceptable severance deal between the council and one of the executive directors, then the remaining executive director will become the designate chief executive and head of paid service from Monday the 28th of September, when the new structure will commence.
Do you wish me to unshare that now?
If you could unshare that now, please. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you. And Councillor Osborne, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. Well, two things there that have surprised me. One is the sort of speed with the demise of a post potentially, and the other one is how quick Lisa got that thing up on the screen and that. But anyway, there we are. I've just got a question. If someone could attempt an answer, it's with regard to IESE, the IESE group, I assume. It says here on page 15, at the cabinet meeting on the March the 20th, no payments have yet been made. I assume that by this time next week, will their services no longer be required? And if that is the case, will we be receiving an invoice very soon afterwards? And do we have an idea of how much that will be? Thank you.
Councillor Field, are you able to answer that one?
No, I'm not. I mean, I wasn't, sorry. I think we would need to consult an officer to get the exact figures. I wasn't expecting to be answering questions as the debate went on, because normally that's done in the summing up, but I can
Thank you.
carry on. I can
No,
take
thank you. Because in fact, Andrew Lana from IESE has shown he wishes to interject. I'll go to him shortly, but I wanted to go to Malcolm Johnston first, as he was wanted to make a point.
Thank you, Chairman. Sorry, I was struggling with the unmute button. If you're in agreement, Chairman, I think as there is obviously some discussion of the matter, it would probably be easier for members and fairer on members if I left the room while that discussion was going on. So I will leave the meeting, and if Lisa could invite me back at the end, I'd be grateful. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Malcolm. Mr. Lana, hoping you'll be able to answer Councillor Osborne's point. I'll ask you to speak before I... Oh, one moment. Good question. And now a point of order that can a non-councillor or non-officer interject? Lisa?
Well, Mr. Lana is here to specifically assist with this particular matter. So, yes, of course, he would be able to answer any questions that we can't answer.
Thank you. That's what my view. I thought if he's here to help and can answer Councillor Osborne's question, then yes. Thank you, Councillor Maynard, but I will allow Mr. Lana to speak to answer Councillor Osborne's question. Thank you.
So IESE is a not-for-profit social enterprise owned by councils to help them transform. And when we generate a surplus from our activity, the board of IESE allocates that to councils that are going through particularly large changes. So the board actually authorised me to bring on board associates and legal team to undertake this work free of charge to Rother, so there will be no bill for the work. There may be other transformation work going forward once the initial changes are made, which you are open to users for in the normal way. But there will be no recharging of time or costs for this activity.
Thank you, Mr. Lana. Hopefully that answered your question, Councillor Osborne. And I shall move to Councillor Kirby Green.
Thank you, Chairman. Thank you, Chairman. I'm still a little confused about the order in which this is happening, and I have raised this on several occasions. My background is in organisational change and transformation, and it just seems to me that we're putting the cart before the horses. It's very odd. I mean, what Councillor Field has said in her opening remarks, all the references she made to allowing people to aspire and develop and etc. Great stuff. But I'm still not quite sure changing one role reaches that. What you'd normally do is you decide where you want to get to at the end, and then you work your way backwards. And as part of that, will there be a new organisational structure? As far as I can see, there's no new organisational structure. The only thing that's happening is 2 roles are being taken out and 1 is being put in place. I'm not sure whether the person that is going to be taking this role has actually got any experience in transformation. I don't know. I wasn't aware. But if that's what, so we're ring fencing this role to someone who may not even have the actual attributes we need for the role. I'm just very confused. As an aside, I would say there's lots of discussion about the fact that this paper was presented by the 2 existing officers. The only flippant comment I would make is, I guess if it's made quite obvious that people don't want you to work anymore, you would probably provide a paper that actually gets rid of your job, wouldn't you?
Thank you, Councillor Kirby-Green. Councillor Ganley.
Thank you, Chairman. The purpose of this recommendation, obviously, is to get rid of one particular executive director. In the 14 years that I've known and worked with him, he has never acted other than in the interests of the people of Rother. He's completely non-political and even-handed in his dealing with council matters. I've worked with and for huge corporations across the world and have rarely come across a more professional, capable and sensible officer than him. Had it not been for him, we would never have had the joint waste agreement, to name just one major project. It is quite unacceptable that he is being treated in this way.
Chairman, point of order. May I raise a point of order?
Yes.
We have been told that we are not to actually mention names, but it's quite obvious from the way Councillor Ganley is speaking that he is alluding to one person.
Well, that may be the case, but I have not mentioned any names.
I think that is... I'll refer to Lee's on this because it was always going to be a fine balancing point. We discussed this earlier about it would be obvious who someone was talking about if you knew them. Mrs. Cooper, your guidance with this legal advice?
I mean, if members can refrain from obviously making comment which identifies particular officers, then that would be helpful, because we've been asked not to do so.
Yes, thank you. I think Councillor Ganley is fine in what he's been saying, although people in the know would know who he's talking about. People that the public don't necessarily. And I think Mr. Ganley, Councillor Ganley should carry on.
Thank you, Chairman. I just wanted to finish by saying that very sadly, it's too late to attempt to retain him. In the light of the treatment meted out to him by certain members, I imagine that he would not be willing to remain at Rother District Council. But his departure will be a huge loss to the people of Rother, whom he has served impeccably over the last 27 years. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Ganley. Councillor Bird.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Could somebody please comment on the union's position, as I understand they can't? I understand they have not been consulted with any detail and do not know really what is happening. Could somebody make a comment on this for me, please?
I hope someone will appear in a moment in the chat wanting to answer that, Councillor Bird. Councillor Thomas.
Chair, I'm trying to turn my camera on, actually. Is it on now? Thank you. Chair, members of the council, members of the public. This is an extremely serious matter before the council, and I think it's important to emphasise that these measures are not being taken for any sort of personal or vindictive reasons. They're being taken in order to improve the structure and the efficiency of the council. And that is a very, very serious matter. And I think that's what we should concentrate on in this debate tonight. The council is seeking to achieve serious objectives vital to the people of Rother. It wants to ensure that policies are formulated and implemented to improve people's lives. And the creation of a single chief executive is the favoured model of organisational experts, including those that the council has engaged. There is a unique role for a chief executive. A chief executive is the point of union and responsibility between the interior of an organisation and its outside. The chief executive is the principal point of contact between the internal processes of the council and the world outside of democratic and community accountability and accessibility. So the chief executive is the necessary accountable link between the costs on the inside and the results, the benefits for the people of Rother on the outside. And if this role is centred on a single person, it increases the transparency and authority of the function while releasing the post holder from some of the bread and butter issues of the Director of Operations. And this enhances the post holder's ability to concentrate on strategy. And no, it's not headline catching stuff. It's not the way to win the applause of the group of internet trolls, but it will seriously enhance the council's efficiency. And the second objective here, and here I would like to draw the members' attention to the second of the principal responsibilities of the new chief executive as laid out in Appendix A1 in the papers of the Licensing and General Purposes Committee. And it is, and I quote, to lead the development and establishment of a transformed council, ensuring it is successful, viable and excellent in service delivery to customers. Now this, Chair, is at the heart of the matter. Transformation. It declares that what matters to us are the people of Rother and the quality of the service we can provide to them. We recognise that service delivery can be the Achilles heel of local government. Reality hasn't always matched up to ambition, and this council is determined that in future it will. And so to do that, it's necessary to have a strategic attitude towards the council itself. It's necessary for the council to develop as a self-reflexive, self-critical organisation, and at the same time, infinitely more open to the creative talents of organisations and the creative talents of people within it. I spoke to a resident only at the weekend who praised this council for the way in which it recognised talent, brought people on and gave people opportunities. And that's the kind of compliment we would like everybody to be able to pay to this council and the way in which it treats its staff. So it's obvious that this is a role which can be done successfully only by a single individual. This is absolutely vital because the chief executive is then able to provide consistency and constancy in terms of providing this function. So what we've seen,
winding up,
what we've seen, I think, is we've seen this council be very successful in terms of meeting its objectives, keeping to its promises, keeping up a momentum with innovation in many areas, such as the housing corporation and the environment policy. And if we're going to keep up this momentum, we need to have a transformed council, which is able to perform all these functions and is also able to keep up a creative momentum in the years ahead. And this is the necessary mechanism to do it. This will be the linchpin of all the progress which will come in the future. And so on that basis, I would like to suggest it would be really good if members of the Conservative Party could set aside sectarian opposition and unanimously endorse the report of the Licensing and General Purposes Committee, because this is basically about improving the delivery of services within the council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Thomas. Councillor Maynard.
Thank you very much indeed, Chairman. Let me just say this is not sectarian opposition to what is proposed. This is simply adopting an approach which is both pragmatic and puts residents' needs first. We in the Conservative group are hugely concerned about staff morale within the authority, and we're hugely concerned about the way this has been meted out to the senior directors. Councillor Kirby-Green has also referred to the fact that we seem to be doing this in a very strange manner. If this was a transformation programme, we want to know what it was doing from the council to the top to the bottom, and then we'd have something to vote for. But it's all about taking your staff with you.
And engaging with the unions at the 11th hour, ladies and gentlemen, is not how you do that. And actually allaying their fears and actually taking them in and taking the staff with you at the very beginning of this process is what with the Rother Alliance should have done. Instead of engaging with IESE and in fact taking forward what they see as a transformation process. They don't bones about this. This has been driven by the Liberal Democrats, who see Eastbourne Council as a very successful transformation. Ladies and gentlemen, a council with debt, a district or borough council with debt, I believe, if you check, that is in excess of £350 million, isn't a successful exemplar to be followed. The existing top tier at Rother District Council were very effective, very driven, and had, frankly, a very useful set of talents. The gentlemen who were at the top of the tree both were very, very diligent in what they do. And I'm not going to mention names, but I will say they complemented each other in that one was very much focused on projects and taking key transformational projects forward, not just for Bexhill, but for the whole of the district. And what I'm concerned about and what Conservatives are concerned about is that we've got the necessary resilience within this authority to do the day-to-day things that we need to do. But not only that, that we can have members of staff in-house that can carry out the major objectives which we have. I'm not sure either, ultimately, once this goes through today, as to whether IESE will be seeing you through this transformation process, taking you forward in a very Lib Dem-esque approach, or whether it will be in fact led by a pragmatic chief executive. There are so many questions, ladies and gentlemen, that remain unanswered. This has been rushed through behind closed doors without proper consultation either with opposition councillors or indeed with the staff. To do it effectively, you need to take your staff with you, and you've shown quite clearly not only are you not prepared to do that, but you haven't done it, and actions speak louder than words. Thank you, Chairman.
Thank you, Councillor Maynard. Councillor Coleman.
Yes, thank you very much, Chair. I have to say, I was shocked to hear the comments of some of the Conservative members when this item came up at licensing, and I'm very sad to hear that some of those same arguments, in fact, one speech identical, has come up again tonight. It is one thing for an opposition party to be critical of the administration. Indeed, that's their purpose. It's a purpose that I will always defend. But what we heard at licensing and what we've heard tonight is not criticism, it is propaganda, it is misinformation, and it's time to set the record straight. At licensing, members heard Councillor Ganley proclaim that the purpose of this report was to, quote, get rid of an executive director, and he repeated that again tonight. We heard Councillor Curtis call this a smokescreen for a hidden agenda. Councillor Maynard called this a pincer movement. This, as Councillor Maynard often likes to say, is utter nonsense, Chair. The facts are clear that it was the executive directors who initiated this process, and that this administration has worked openly with those directors and their union to make this process work, including putting it on hold to ensure that we had the depth of experience of both directors during the pandemic. But the Conservative members didn't just entertain the one conspiracy at licensing, Chair. We also heard claims that things were being done behind closed doors. In fact, Councillor Maynard went as far as to call it a mockery of democracy. The facts clearly demonstrate that this process has been fair, legal and transparent throughout. But perhaps Conservative members who raised this at licensing and again tonight just haven't been reading their reports properly. They certainly didn't say anything of note at the multiple meetings that preceded this report coming to licensing. No constructive criticism, no suggested changes, and certainly no effective opposition. And if these bogus claims of shadowy pincer moves and secret meetings weren't enough, Chair, we also heard some claims of a mass staff exodus. Indeed, Councillor Maynard claimed that there was a danger of not retaining staff because of the alliance coming to power, quoting the members of staff who had left, but not actually giving the reasons for their departure. And we heard from Councillor Vinyl earlier that those reasons are actually ordinary reasons, and there hasn't been some mass exodus. It's not quite the picture of despair that Councillor Maynard painted. And in fact, that turnover of 13% is very little different to the turnover of 12% under his administration in the previous year. Now, Chair, at licensing, we also heard Conservative members rightly praise the many years of services to this council by the outgoing Executive Director. But to use that praise, Chair, as a launch pad for their propaganda speeches is frankly a disgrace. And then they have the audacity at licensing to bring the meeting into private session, excluding the press and public, just to call for a reduction in the outgoing Director's pay package. Chair, I am sick of the Conservative members using the valued staff of this council as political fodder. Our staff are worth much more than that. When Councillor Maynard says that the staff morale is at an all-time low and Councillor Bird says the majority of staff are against this, without a scrap of evidence, purely to make a point, they make a mockery of the political process. If I was a member of staff here, Chair, I would be appalled that the Conservatives have used me to score points. I would be appalled that they have taken the constructive Unison Starside response and misquoted it for their own political benefit. In fact, Councillor Bird said, Chair, that he'd never seen a paper from Unison so damning in all his life, which leads me to question, Chair, whether he's actually read any reports from Unison before. But then he is a member of the Conservative Party, so I doubt it. Perhaps, Chair, Conservative councillors should lobby their government to meet the £10 billion shortfall in local service funding that Unison have been tirelessly campaigning for before they claim to speak for the unions, because they don't, Chair. You see, the Rother Alliance didn't just take the Unison Starside response and use it to make poorly prepared political speeches. No, this administration, Chair, took the queries and concerns on board and worked constructively with Unison Starside and Alice the Union to reach an agreement. Because like the unions, this administration wants only the best for this council. It is only the arbiter of alternative facts that is the Conservative group who want to see this council fail. Thankfully, they aren't in control here anymore, Chair.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Coleman. Councillor John Barnes.
Chairman, I'm sorry that Councillor Coleman is trying to politicise this. I genuinely spoke at licensing and general purposes about the concerns of Unison. I'm sorry they're not in front of this council tonight. I know that they've had further discussions with Councillor Oliver and that they are still unhappy. And they're unhappy for a particular reason, and that is that they're worried about a director, a chief executive, who is going to concentrate on transformation. And they're worried about the effect on really the coordination of the day-to-day activity of the council. And there was a particular concern raised which hasn't been answered, which is who will deputise when in fact the chief executive is on leave. Over the last few years, I think the current system of executive directors has worked extraordinarily well. They've had complementary skills. They've done turn and turnabout, 6 months on, 6 months off in the chief's role. So we have not been without a chief executive. Now, that is not an argument that we should not now at this stage move to have a chief executive. We're told, incidentally, that there is a heavy transformation programme already underway, so it hasn't, in fact, waited for the appointment of that chief executive. But what I'm a little worried about, and I have gone through, as Councillor Thomas may remember, a difficult situation at another body where we made the mistake of not creating a proper framework, a proper balance of time for the chief executive, and we didn't pay enough attention to the day-to-day responsibilities that had to be put in place. As a result, that interim chief executive has not been appointed. He's actually had to go, and we are now hunting for a new chief executive, and the organisation is in some degree of disarray. I sense some of the same problems here. I don't know who is going to manage the new performance manager, the new chief executive, but I've yet to see a proper framework and performance objectives for him or her. In this case, it will be a him because there are only two hims involved. But the other problem, and I really think it is a real one, is while this director is acting as an exalted brooder presiding over to the transformation of this organisation, somebody will have to coordinate at the day-to-day level. The new chief executive may be able to do part of that, but again, nobody's talked about the distribution of his time. But what we really need to know is how the day-to-day activities are not going to split off into silos because of insufficient coordination. And that's the answer I'm seeking tonight, and I haven't yet heard it.
Thank you. Thank you, Councillor Barnes. Councillor Oliver, perhaps you've got the answer to everyone's questions.
Yes, thank you, Chairman. I think there's been quite a significant amount of misunderstandings here. I am able to confirm that both executive directors could apply for this post. So there hasn't been any predetermination effectively, as both of them could apply for the posts. With regard to Unison have been consulted. It's a rather sensitive position that we've been in, and therefore the situation was that this report was regarding the senior executives, the executive directors of Rother, and therefore it was important that we didn't get into protracted discussions about other issues. Any other issues would be a full consultation with staff. Everyone would be aware of that. And as for transformation, this has been set aside. Transformation was not part of what was going forward. We decided, for the purpose of continuity, that we would actually look at our organisation as it is at the moment going forward with one chief executive. And therefore any transformation work, what's being put together now, is exactly the framework, the behavioural performance monitoring, and that is being done externally. We're also externally using IEC for the purpose of putting together our corporate plan to take some heat away from the existing officers in view of the projects that are coming forward. So I do assure you that there is no transformation underway, apart from two pieces of work which we've undertaken. And given the fact that deputies, well, the chief executive, one of his first roles will be to reorganise and look at how he will be using his senior officers and service managers, but he will also identify what arrangements would need to be put in place as a deputy. And that's something which can happen in any organisation, but that would be a task of the chief executive once that appointment has taken place. On legal advice, I think you've been covered off by Dr. Lana with regard to the use of IEC. And in order to bring in independent outside legal guidance, it was only fair and appropriate for the officers to be able to take this advice, and therefore this was appointed by Rother District Council. It's almost some 16 months now. And there's been significant projects come forward with this administration, despite the intervention of the continuing pandemic. The senior management team approached me last November 2019 with a management model to achieve efficiency and strategic single role. The intervention of COVID has delayed bringing forward certain parts of business, but when we say that, significant business has been achieved, and this has been managed by the senior management team and officers who are committed and professional, as expected. And given many government directives that come out on a Monday, there's our officers that needed to put this in place in quick time. The executive directors and the senior management team, service managers and staff, have continued to respond amidst the uncertainty which is so evident going forward. And part of this uncertainty will be taken forward by the new management model that we are proposing will go forward after tonight's meeting and the due appointment of a new chief executive. There's numerous exciting projects that members are aware of, which shows that Rother will be well placed to emerge from the pandemic and respond to the financial impact created. The way forward will be exciting, I assure you, full of positives. Members, officers with staff working in collaboration, working together, which has shown the clarity that working together works. There is a change. This administration with the new organisation at the lead is going to be different. There will be a different culture within Rother. Going forward with its plans, with a new management structure will achieve its goals. This administration seeks to enhance community engagement. Rother being a wonderful place to live, need to retain our resident focus, business engagement, and encourage others to see Rother as a place to be. I personally acknowledge the tremendous support from the senior management team over the last 15, 16 months. And I know that the remodel, the new model of going forward will be well equipped to take Rother forward to achieve our goals.
Thank you.
I assure you of that. That is part of the direction of this administration. Thank you.
Thank you. I gave you a bit longer as leader of the council, a bit longer than I gave Councillor Maynard as leader of the opposition. Thank you. Councillor Field, you called this over. Do you want to wrap up before I move to a vote?
Just a very few things, Chair. Thank you. And first of all, Councillor Maynard is, of course, right. This isn't sectarian. It's not a Liberal Democrat plan. It's not a Labour plan. It's not an independent plan. It's an alliance plan, and we are working together to improve this council. Every teacher will tell you have to say everything 3 times before people really get the message. So I will say again, there is no malice in this. The suggestion was brought to us, and the current incumbent of the posts under discussion have behaved with consummate professionalism and have been extremely impartial when you work with them. It is not a criticism of them. The council is changing, we are changing with it, and I can see only success in the future. So I do hope members will please support this. Thank you.
Thank you. I'm going to move to the vote. I wonder, Lisa, if it would be helpful to put up the amended recommendation 9 again, just to make councillors fully aware that this has been included, and if they're voting for it, they're voting for recommendation number 9 as well.
Okay, Chairman, one moment.
Sorry, I sprung that on you.
So the proposed amendment should be on screen now.
Yes, thank you. So that's the recommendation 9 that's added to the 8 recommendations you've got in the paper tonight. So,
Chair,
yes.
could I just ask, is it an amendment or an additional recommendation? Because the procedure would be different, wouldn't it?
It's not an amendment, it's an additional recommendation.
Thank you.
Thank you, despite what it says at the top of the paper. Thank you. Thank you. If you can stop sharing that now, Lisa, and we'll go to the vote, please. Thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. John Barnes.
Abstain.
Mary Barnes.
Abstain.
Bayliss.
Full.
Bird.
Against.
Brewerton.
For.
Brown.
Against.
Byrne.
For.
Carroll.
Against.
Clark.
For.
Coleman.
For.
Mrs. Cook.
For.
Courtell.
For.
Curtis.
Against.
Dixon.
For.
Drayson.
For.
Mrs. Earl Williams.
For.
Errington.
For.
Field.
For.
Ganley.
Against.
Gray.
For.
Johnson.
Against.
Mrs. Kirby Green.
Against.
Langlands.
For.
Maidley.
For.
Maynard.
Against.
Mear.
For.
Mooney.
Against.
Norton.
Say for. For.
Osborne.
Against.
Sorry. Oliver.
For.
Osborne,
Against.
Proshak,
4.
Stevens,
Against.
Thomas,
4.
Tempe,
4.
Vinehall.
Very much for, thank you.
Thank you, Chairman. That is carried.
Thank you, Lisa. Right, where am I? Agenda item 10, appointments to committee. To receive a report of the Executive Director on changes to the committee and membership in respect of the Association of Independents Group. Who am I calling for this? Sorry.
Chairman.
Yes.
Chairman, very sorry. I need to call Mr. Leonard and
Oh yes,
Dobson
sorry.
back into the room.
Yes.
Chairman, I'm back. So if,
And so is Tony. Dr.
Yes,
Leonard.
thank you. Sorry, once again, agenda item 10. The appointments to committee to receive a report of the Executive Director on changes to committee membership in respect of the Association of Independents Group. Is that you, Malcolm?
no, Chairman, I think it's just for Councillor Oliver to...
Councillor Oliver, yes, sorry, I lost my place. Councillor Oliver.
Yes, I think thank you, Chairman. I think the report is pretty straightforward. It's with regard to rescheduling some of the committee makeup as a result of various commitments of other councillors and bringing forward the substitutes to come on to meetings. I would assume that this is pretty straightforward and all members have read this and will concur that this is the appropriate way of doing it. Up to now, substitutes have stepped across, but this is formalising the arrangement. Thank you.
Yes, thank you, Councillor Oliver. Seconded by anyone?
Yes, seconded, but there are further amendments, Councillor Drayson, Chairman.
Oh, right.
There were further amendments circulated. I think Councillor Dixon has got the details of these.
Oh, right. Sorry, Councillor Dixon, can you add to these?
Thank you, Chairman. Yes, there was a report circulated by email today to update this. I would like to remove Councillor Thomas from planning and replace him with Councillor Norton, with the opposite being true of the substitute member. This is because Councillor Thomas has now been appointed to the Housing Company and cannot serve as a substantive member on planning. Thank you.
I'm sorry, thank you, Councillor Dixon. I've got that printed off in front of me, but I missed it. Thank you very much. So who was seconded? Councillor Prochak.
Prochak seconded, yeah.
Thank you. Is there any debate on this matter, please? And no, in that case, again, as it's for a matter of noting, I don't intend calling for a vote on this. And that brings us to the meeting being closed. I want to thank all members and officers for their participation today in what was an interesting and lively meeting. Thank you very much and good night all.